punk rock and street trash. Wastelands. And here are your hosts, long-time partners in slime, Adam Obscene and Mark.
Hello world, this is Wastelands and I'm Adam Obscene, and with me as always is the mighty, he's very mighty Marco Mark.
Hey, Adam Obscene, reporting for duty. Hi, listeners. Glad you could make it to another episode.
Listeners, apologies for last weekend. We had unforeseeable technical difficulties, but today is your much anticipated, much promised episode. And what we are going to do is what we always do. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm just going to play this one.
In the future, the world has survived. Romance has not.
I want you to chase those birds till they drop.
If you think it's tough to meet the right people now, wait till you go looking for a Cherry 2000.
Cherry 2000.
Oh, this movie actually is really good for what it is for a 1986 movie set in the future, which is our past, 2017. This is actually an enjoyable watch it once kind of movie in my mind.
Is this the first time you've seen it?
Yeah.
So you weren't old school. You didn't see it back in the day or in 80 video shop trawling.
No. This is brand new to me. So
wow,
I wasn't out there looking for Cherry 2000.
I find that amazing.
I know. I didn't find Cherry 2000. Cherry 2000 found me. That's how I think of it.
Well, that's the power of Melanie Griffith.
Oh, she is so good in this. She's great.
Listeners, just so that let's get you the vitals and then we'll jump straight into it. So basically, it's a post-apocalyptic future where I guess you'd say that it's kind of like a cross between Mad Max and Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
Romance is sort of everything is being compartmentalized and turned into contracts in this world, and this is the Blade Runner part of it, is that everything is done with lawyers, everything is done, it's business. It's an 80s capitalistic, it's where people thought that the 80s was going to turn out. And to be honest, if the 80s kept going where it was going, the shoulder pads would have got bigger, nightclubs would have had in-house lawyers doing contractual sexual one-night stand agreements, and and we would end up having zones of metropolis-based capitalist sophistication, and then bring in the Mad Max component, zones which is just the wastelands where marauders and cults and and weirdos live. So it's like having the main city in Blade Runner surrounded by Bartertown.
But that paints a very kind of like dark, futuristic, sort of ominous element adds, but it actually is kind of a comedy.
It's totally straight up a comedy. For intentional reasons and maybe unintentional reasons. Like there is a dose of comedy in there that drops flat when they're trying to be funny, but then there is a bunch of stuff in this which is just like absolutely hilarious. So basically what happens is that not only has personal relationships been commodified and turned into a legal arrangement, there's been humans which have opted out and gone, screw it, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to go down the world of the love bot. And so there's this young fella, Sam, who has his love bot, Cherry 2000, and she's like his dream woman, does everything for him. He believes that she's more than just a robot, but then she short circuits out and he has to try and get her repaired. And he can't. And the only way that he can get a replacement Cherry 2000 is to get a tracker to take him into Zone 7 to the abandoned Cherry 2000 factory to reclaim his...
Yes.
Because the carcass, I guess carcass, that's a bad word, it sounds horrible, but the body, because he can put the little mini CD into her neck, which is her personality and her lived experience.
Yeah, that's right. So it's like that whole genesis of like, can you just take someone's mind and put it in their body? So so he's got to get a tracker and go out to the abandoned Cherry 2000 warehouse, which is in Las Vegas.
Which is great because they do that typical awesome thing in post-apocalyptic movies where they bury half the shit in sand.
Yeah, it's great.
So you got the main strip in Vegas, and it's like you've got these like fiberglass showgirls sort of popping out of the sand, and how funny are their faces, dude? Like from a distance they look cool, and up close they are the most grotesque looking things. I love it. They're so cool.
Yeah. It's a good touch.
So I guess that's kind of like the premise, is that this guy, who seems like a bit of a dweeb, to be honest, Sam, ends up he teams up with he goes into the sort of the outer regions to find a tracker. He gets a hot tip from his love bot mechanic of who to chase up, and he looks for E. Johnson, who is Melanie Griffith, who is a tracker. He sort of automatically turns away because thinking, she's not going to be able to do it, and then walks into a bar, and it's like a typical Western saloon scene, like in the future. And listeners, if you've been with us for the journey, you know how much we love a comical saloon scene. So when that happens, it's like, yes.
For sure.
He goes in there, and he tries to find another. He goes in asking for six finger Freddy or
Larry, three finger Larry, and he gets hornswoggled by none other than Byron James, which is really interesting. Byron James is actually in. We've spoken about him a couple of times, but he's in Blade Runner. And he's also the mad scientist in Frogtown 2 with Robert Kazar. Okay, and so he's in this vein of
so
action comedy.
So let's just loop that back around really quickly. So who's in it? You've got Melanie Griffith is E. Johnson. You've got David Andrews, who plays Sam.
Sam Treadwell.
Yeah, Sam Treadwell. You've got Harry Carey Jr., who is an old school Western sort of actor. You've got you've actually got Lawrence Fishburne in it, in there as the lawyer in the Glue Club, which is he's actually has this great scene where he's doing a contractual arrangement between two people. He's looking all very fly, future fly and I think he's actually credited in this film as Larry Fishburne.
Oh, wow. Yes, he is too. Look at that.
Six Finger Jake is played by Ben Johnson, another old school Westerner. He's great. And Byron James is sort of like the guy who hornswangles him. But to tie that around, you've got Byron James. You've also got Robert Zadar. So
he's my favourite.
So to tie in there's a total solid direct ancestral lineage from Cherry 2000 to Frogtown 2.
It's
like wild. That really blew my mind. I went, wow, okay, that's pretty excellent. And so Chet as Zadar plays is a minor character in it, as is Byron James, but look, they're still in there.
They're henchmen sort of people.
So it's a good cross between, and this is what I think is interesting about this film. It was filmed in 85, got a release in Europe in 86 in the theatres, and then it didn't get a theater release in the States. It went to direct-to-video. So it's a good combination of old school Westerner classic actors, B-grade staples, and then emerging talent.
Yeah,
and
nice.
So it's sort of got all that through. So that's kind of the rundown. Just some little interesting facts just before we jump into what we truly thought about it. This movie was quite expensive. It cost a bit.
Right.
And it made nothing back. So I think it was 10 million. It cost 10 million of 1985 money. And do you want to have a stab at what its box office was?
$2 million.
No, mate, 14,000.
Oh.
That's not going to do it. And I don't know, listeners, I don't know if you know how box office works, but the studios split that with the cinemas.
So it bombed massively.
Look, and since then has picked up a massive cult following, and like,
sure.
But I don't know if it'd ever make back its 10 million. But that's epic, dude. That's one of those things where you go, wow. But, you know, I think there was all intention that it was going to release in the cinemas. And that's the thing. If you only release a film that costs $10 million to a limited regional market, say like of Europe, you're not going to hit your money mark, are you?
No, you're not. You're not.
It was, so I don't know why it never, like, I think they maybe got shaky boots. But it's another classic example. For me, it feels a little bit like Waterworld. It's like when, you know, Waterworld or Thunderdome. It's like, it's not a cheap Italian, you know, knockoff.
No,
it's a Hollywood. It's a Hollywood post-apocalyptic film.
Yeah. I got little snippets of Escape from LA in this as well.
It's definitely got that comedy element of you know, the tongue in cheek. Like E. Johnson could be the female Snake Plissken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
she's got that swagger and that, you know, that style, which I really enjoyed her the way her approach in this. But so that's kind of that's the lowdown. Like it's a really enjoyable, disastrous budget making back watch. But it's like I said, it's very watchable, right?
It is very watchable. Yeah, I would say it's a good Saturday night in. You know, I sometimes the only way I can express what I thought of it was to make up an alternative title for it, ads, and I've called this one. Wow, my handwriting is so bad. Wow,
that's a really interesting name to call it.
Yeah. It's like if John Waters made Escape from Palm Springs with a short detour via Las Vegas.
It really is. It's got that. And like we talk a little bit about in these past films like Munchies and some of these films that have a very 80s feel about it. And I explained a pretty dark scene of the metropolitan loveless community, loveless society. What gets interesting when they get out into Sector 7 is Sam bumps into, this is unexplainable and hilarious, as for some reason, of all places, they run into the Marauders, and then he wakes up in this Palm Springs style poolside cabana with his little Hawaiian shirt on and cocktails, and it's his ex-girlfriend. All the people in the world, his ex-girlfriend has teamed up with the leader of the Marauders in this weird 80s dome living desert cult.
Yeah, it's like as if they took over Palm Springs and they became a brainwashed cult that lived in these sort of like, you know, individual envirodomes and called it Sky Ranch. And made
the Sky Ranch.
Sky Ranch.
It was a modernist holiday park on the outskirts of Palm Springs that somehow survived the apocalypse.
Yeah, for sure. But they're all a bit wonky.
Yeah, and like
they're all a bit faulty.
It's all like boardwalks, and there's this one scene, Lawson's, I love it, is that they're all having it's a community, a cultish community, but they're having their cookout, and every dude has an apron standing at a Weber barbecue, and there's a lineup of 20 Weber barbecues and it's that kitschiness in this cult that brings that sort of real 80 comedy flavor. They're wearing pastels and it's white and they're in the desert, but they are a violent, marauding desert gang.
And I love that. I love the little scene in that scene ads and the little the tribal drums playing in the background. So it's like you've got tiki torches and a bonfire going, and you've got all these like weird, not quite right guys dressed in 50s with, you know, barbecuing with tribal drums in the background and you know, Bob Zadar and the henchmen keeping lookout because it's actually quite a dangerous wasteland.
But they're in their
dichotomy.
almost obliviously living in their blissful cult life.
Yeah. Like the lady says at the end. Oh no, I shouldn't give the spoiler away.
No, we'll get to that bit.
But the final concern is like, oh well, whatever. No, they don't seem phased if people get.
It's that
killed.
sort of dropout. It's the fact is that they've actually this everything has been, like I said, in this future has been so commodified. Like it's by say in the cities, it's its deals are done. But these guys represent these people represent the dropouts.
Yeah,
and they're almost like this, a conservative crew. It's not the misfits that have dropped out. It's the conservative, middle America, RV holidaying people, which have become the marauding, violent, desert pirates.
Yeah, set in the future,
And I think that there's a couple of really interesting nods that from the surface could be considered wholesome, except for there's a liberal dose of murder through what they do.
Exactly.
E. Johnson drives a sick Mustang, and there's a couple of really interesting scenes of her driving that with Sam to get into the quarantine zones to get the Cherry 2000. And I've got to say, just a general observation, excessive overuse of single-use bazookas or rocket launchers. But
true.
Single-use rocket launchers that are reloaded.
They might have been left over from Frogtown.
I think they might have been. Frogtown 2.
Frogtown 2, of course.
Mate, what? I've got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but I just want to dive into your little pickups. What was the outstanding part? The bits that stuck with you. Like clearly this kept you engaged all the way through, right? There was no scrubbing.
I didn't scrub, no. The acting was pretty good, like you said earlier, we're talking about a Hollywood production, so it was done pretty well. It was fun in that I thought about it is in like if you were sitting down with some friends on a Saturday night, a great trilogy of movies to watch would be Escape from LA, this movie Cherry 2000, and Tank Girl. That would be a really fun trilogy to watch with friends. They're
almost the same universe, aren't they?
Almost the same universe, desert outposts and desert wastelands.
And weird metropolis takes, degraded or uber conservative metropolises like.
Yeah. And there's a kind of like a smattering of Ace Ventura thrown in there for good luck.
For comedy.
Especially costume-wise, for sure. I really liked Melanie Griffith's acting in this. I thought she was great. She did... what was her character? She did her character
E. Johnson,
really well. E. Johnson, sorry.
This interesting because about a year later, so there was a bit of buzzer in 87 around Melanie Griffith at the time because Working Girl was about to drop, and there was I think she got an Academy Award nomination, may even won for that movie. I think that if there was a reason why I feel like this movie was shelved and wouldn't have seen the light of day, except for that she became the it girl by the end of the 80s, and then it got released. And
okay.
So she actually did big stuff with from that point on. She actually had a pretty big career. But this is kind of like the one that there's always these great movies, isn't there? These sort of foundation movies where they've done a B movie or something like that.
Yeah, especially like with Lawrence Fishburne. He pops up in a couple as well, like this, and then now he's Lawrence Fishburne.
That's it. Speaking of Waterworld, did you know that Kevin Costner was offered the role of Sam in this movie?
I didn't know that, but
you could
totally fits in.
Yeah, this would make, if that was the case, this would make this the third in the Costner post-apocalyptic trilogy of Waterworld, Postman, Cherry 2000.
Yeah, that would actually work. That's all in this universe. Like you said, Costner's not in it, but this feels like that same kind of universe. And if you like that universe, this is a good watch.
He's definitely channeling his best Costner.
Yeah, and the hair was a little his hair was very Costner, but with a little MacGyver thrown in at the back as well.
Little bit of party at the back. So Costner did Silverado instead, which was a Westerner, which is not that far removed from the Western elements in this. But
no,
a couple of the other little bits. There's some Easter eggs in there. I don't know if you picked them up, but the whole thing about love bots and replicants and trackers like Blade Runner. But there was a scene when Sam takes the Cherry to the love bot mechanic, and in the workshop there is the robots from Forbidden Planet from 1956 and the robot from The Day the Earth Stood Still from 1951 in the background.
I did not pick that up.
Yeah,
that is amazing.
I just went, wow, what? Yeah, wow. Yeah. So that was cool.
So cool.
The other one that I mentioned before, Ben Johnson and Harry Carey Jr. were old Westerners. They did a lot of. They were discovered actually by that classic Western director John Ford, who did a lot of stuff with John Wayne, and and they started off sort of like as horse wranglers and stuntmen, but then in their own right got their own Western films. They starred in 9 movies together back in the 50s and 60s, and this was actually the final film that they starred together in. So that was
classic.
So that was like Six Finger Jake and the other guy had a Snappy Tom.
Snappy Tom,
which I thought was funny because Snappy Tom's like, I don't know if it's Snappy Tom in the States is cat food, but here it was cat food. And I think that, the fact that I don't know, this could be I could be clutching at Easter eggs, but the fact that Mad Max ate dog food and Snappy Tom is cat food, and he was living
that's it. In Mad Max, it was Dinky Die.
Yeah. So, Dinky Die dog food and Snappy Tom cat food kind of went hand in hand in the 80s in Australia. And he was living with his young bride in an Airstream next to a toxic waste dump. So, and he eventually turns on, double crosses Six Finger Jake and E and Sam, because he has got an allegiance to the marauding cult of desert conservative pirates.
Yeah. You got a great pedigree of actors in there, Adam, which answers that question.
Yeah, that's why it carries it. It's
why is this good? Yeah.
There is actually another Easter egg from another movie in there that I picked up, is that, so Sam works in like a recycling center, and it's like there's that really cool scene where everyone's walking up ramps with trolleys full of like recycled goods. So in 87 they had that environmental sort of thing. But there's an announcement over the speakers in that just, if you don't pay attention, it was just like, so take your recycling to Sector 7. But it sounded familiar, so I rewound it and listened, and it is actually the male airport announcer's voice from the movie Flying High in 1980. So it goes to show how many times I've seen Flying High.
Flying High, love it. It's like Dr. Martin to podiatry.
We'll have to literally do a deep dive on Leslie Nielsen's movies for sure.
Leslie Nielsen. Oh no. There's a couple of moments we can't talk about at the moment.
They'll talk about connections. This is the Nightmare on Elm Street connection. Sam played a foreman in Nightmare on Elm Street 1. Marty, who was played by Jeff Levine, played the coroner in Nightmare on Elm Street 1. Bill, who was one of the ruffians in the bar, Marshall Bell, played the coach in Freddy's Revenge, Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And Lawrence Fishburne played the lawyer in this one, was in Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Oh, he was the orderly.
Yeah.
That's the other one he pops up in. Thank you for jogging my memory. That's great.
So this one has a legit Nightmare on Elm Street connection as well. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's really fun. That's very cool. I didn't know that.
Look, I got to say, the reason why, like, I've watched this movie a lot. Like, so,
have you?
Yeah,
okay,
I've seen, like, I've got this on VHS. I maybe even got it at the video shop back in the day, and really did love it. And so when I picked up a lot of things in watching it this time round, like that I went, like it's, you know, because it's probably been about 5-6 years since I've watched it properly, but I watched it deeply and pulled out some really weird, cool shit.
That's great.
So it's, you know, look, it's got a lot of really great parts about it, but in generally, it's just it's made up of a whole heap of parts. I'll just rattle off a couple other things that makes it, you know, other films that I really love that it reminds me of. Demolition Man. It reminds me of that movie with Sandra Bullock and Sylvester Stallone in that weird take at the future. And that there's an underground and above ground societies. It's got that dystopian juxtaposition. Mm-hmm. And then there's some just great goofs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's some great goofs in there. It is entertaining and it's fun. It's of that era, you know, where, you know, you can sit down and watch it once and go, "You beauty, that was great." On to Tank Girl. It's a lot of fun.
And I think one of the greatest things about it is that it had, like most things in the 80s, a lot of great taglines. I'm gonna do my tagline thing.
Oh, we're going to tagline.
I wish I'd still had my croaky pneumonia voice that I had a couple of episodes ago, because these taglines that was the perfect voice.
Yeah.
All right, so she's blonde, beautiful, and forever young. She's Cherry 2000, a robotic woman that becomes man's driving passion until he met the real thing.
Ooh, sums it up.
In the future, when the perfect woman short circuits, sex will be an adventure. What? There's a lot more to love than hot wiring.
Oh.
And then this is the classic one that was on most of the video covers. It's need a bounty hunter? She's your man.
Oh, all right. Hey, Melanie Griffith, you did awesome in this.
Mate.
Yes.
Body count.
This is actually not a bad body count. This one has 26 kills for 99 minutes, which gives it a 0.2 kills per minute, or a 1 kill every 3.8 minutes.
Nice.
And that's because of just the sheer number of marauding, cultish, zealot goons that just get destroyed on the top of cliff faces.
Yeah.
Like there's
henchmen.
Those henchmen just like go plummeting. Like Melanie Griffith takes out actually 18, and David Andrews playing Sam takes out 8. So that was
Body count.
So tight. I did find one thing perplexing, and I picked it up this time, and it was something that always stuck with me with this movie, is I never actually understood, you know, there's a trope in movies where actors, because it's plot convenience, can all of a sudden just, they know how to operate stuff that they should have no knowledge of. So Sam can operate like heavy machinery, submachine guns, rocket launchers. And I was like, how? Like he's this dweeb that works in a recycling center in the city. But there's a little tidbit later in the film where it talks about that he fought in the Frontier Wars, whatever that is. Because he's actually a little bit brutal, right?
Yeah,
he can hold his own.
Yeah, it's like he's stymied at the start of the movie. He is stymied and oppressed by that capitalist sort of dystopia that you mentioned. And then once he gets out and starts working with E. Johnson, and they actually start out in the Badlands and the Wastelands, actually getting into some action and some violence, he starts to develop his own sort of skill set, and he kind of finds his feet.
He's at home, like it's the thing. And I think that this is that journey of discovery stuff, where it's just like he was looking for escape. This is where I get philosophical on you. He was looking for escape through the relationship that he was having with a robot, because nothing felt real in that world. It was stifled. It was like it was all over controlled. So he looked for an escape in something that was still seen as taboo, even in that world. It's like, having it. They even say that they retired all the Cherry 2000s and all those dolls because it had moved on, and he kept his going. So he was actually, when that thing that he felt was keeping his independence and different to that society short-circuited, he really lost his way and became obsessed with replacing that he had lost. But in doing so, found something else, which was himself. It's a journey of self-discovery.
And Melanie Griffith, mate, that's almost a good place to park it.
I reckon, mate. I think that's all we've got. Cherry 2000, 1985, 6 or 7. Good watch.
You pick.
Not available on any of the streaming services. So,
actually, it is.
Well, not free.
Not free, not the free streaming services.
You can get it for a princely sum of $4.99 on one of the many paid streaming services. And do yourself a favor, it is a good for shits and giggles, and and like you said, do yourself a triple threat, like Marco said, and chuck it in with Escape from LA and Tank Girl and Cherry 2000, and it works out really well. Mark,
yes,
how can the listeners get in contact with us?
Well, you can find us on all the social platforms, including bloody TikTok now. They can go to our website as well, Adam. Could you please remind me what the URL is?
It's wastelands.com.au.
That's right, because we're in Australia, mate.
It's Australia, mate. And you can send us an email at wastelandsradioshow@gmail.com.
We've still got one of them.
And look, we're starting to get some emails trickling in. I'm planning on gathering them all up and doing a mailbag episode where we actually read out the emails on air to the other listeners. So, a couple more weeks, listeners, get your emails in. That email address is wastelandsradioshow@gmail.com. And you might get a shout out on air.
Beautiful.
So that's about it. Thanks, listeners. Thanks for bearing with us. Apologies for our technical difficulties, but that's what happens when you deliver a podcast in a small atoll in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
It's not hard.
Salt gets in everywhere. Mark, is there anything more you'd like to add?
It's good enough for me.
And it's good night from him.
Street trash.
Like this.